So hello, we are here back with Miss Anita Arnold today, September 15th, 2020. Last conversation, we stopped off with you talking about your efforts with AT&T and breaking the glass ceiling for Black employees to reach higher management. And you talked about after years of that kind of activism, you retired from AT&T and moved back to Oklahoma, correct? After retiring?
That's true, but
Okay.
it wasn't years so much as it was about 3 years.
3
total.
years. Okay.
Yeah, it did. It wasn't like forever and ever. It was
Okay.
it was a 3-year effort,
Okay.
which is why I know that you can get a lot accomplished in a short period of time if you got the right team and you really have an understanding about where you're going.
Yeah.
And it behooves whoever is the driving force behind it to make sure there's a game plan and rules of engagement. I certainly believe in rules of engagement. It works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then after retiring from AT&T, did you move back to Oklahoma
I
immediately after or?
did immediately.
Okay.
I did not waste any time because I had been watching the movies. Juan Perón and Eva Perón on Evita. I think that was the name of the movie. And I guess some people could call it inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And I got this thought that I should move back to Oklahoma and give back to the state, since everything that made me who I was, had been rooted and grounded in education here in Oklahoma and in the community. So I packed my bags. They gave me a nice big going away party. And I came back and immediately moved into a fourplex that I had purchased. See, my children were all in college during this 3-year period of time, all 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a divorced lady. And I'm not minimizing anything about my former husband because he was a good guy. He really was. But, they were graduating, from college, about to. And I had maybe one more year on Chris and Denise because they both graduated high school the same year and went off to college. And then my oldest daughter, Denise, was in the D.C. area starting law school at the time. And I thought, well, I just told you all I'd help you out for 4 years so you wouldn't have debt hanging around your neck. But I did it through real estate in Oklahoma. I didn't dare do that in New Jersey because they had all of these laws that, favored the renter. In other words, you could complain to the court that you didn't pay your rent because the hot water tank wasn't working. And that could go on for months. And the court would rule in favor of the tenant who complained. And I thought, that's a little harsh there, so I better leave real estate alone in New Jersey. See, I only owned my house, so I did buy a home there. And I sold it, packed up the truck, came on back, moved into this fourplex that I own, because that's how I could speak to my children so boldly about, I'll pay all of your college expenses, because I had been investing in Oklahoma real estate all the while I was, but even before I moved to Washington, D.C., even before I moved to New Jersey.
Wow.
We started investing in real estate when I was at OSU, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
I had met this guy that was he was a dapper dresser. And I couldn't understand how he dressed so well. And I found it was because of real estate. And he showed me the ropes on how to buy real estate and make it really pay everything you needed to pay for. So I had already started that. So when I came to Oklahoma, I already had more than a dozen pieces of property in Oklahoma City.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I did. And it included single family homes. It included duplexes. It included fourplexes. And I wouldn't go any further than that because I thought that was as much as I cared to handle.
What's a fourplex? I'm trying
It
to
has
visualize.
four apartments in a building.
Oh, okay. Okay.
2 up and 2 down,
Okay.
usually.
Okay.
And I purchased over in the Jefferson Park area.
Oh.
And so
I like that area.
I moved into one of the units that I had, which just had been occupied by the guy who owned it and that I bought it from. So I just used it the way I wanted to. And so I moved in there. And then I thought, well, I need to learn something about real estate. I didn't know anything about real estate law and this sort of thing. I said, I've been just very fortunate here to invest in real estate and make it pay for all of my children's educations. And I didn't miss a beat, as far as losing any standard of living. I mean, it was just a smooth ride all the way. So, at any rate, I decided, okay, I'll go to a real estate school. So I found a real estate school that was run by a guy by the name of Jim Jones, who ultimately sold me his company, investment brokerage company, and he moved to Florida. He saw and knew that the market was depressed and would be and all that. Well, see, I had yet to learn about all of that.
Mm.
And so I bought his company, investment brokerage company, as he fled the scene here in Oklahoma with all of these properties being boarded up. I laid out my plan on how I was going to do it. I didn't want to really fool with single family homes unless it was commercial, So I didn't spend much time with people who were looking for a home to buy. See, I thought I could go broke fooling around with them because they always said, well, let me mull that over. And I thought, I'll be broke while you mull, And a lot of times they would mull it over for a month, just whatever struck them.
Mm-hmm.
I said, see, that's, so the other brokers, I did have one other broker in my office at first. When I bought it, he came with the territory. And then I had these other sales associates that were already in place. But then we grew the company. And I did take note of certain things about the depressed economy. We moved out of the real estate office, which was in the Tiffany building, which is still over there off of May Avenue, because I thought nobody will ever discover us over here. We have to work too hard. You couldn't put up a sign saying investment brokers company because it was an apartment building and we were in lower level. So I became very close to the other broker. I wasn't a broker. I was a sales associate because I did take the test and I passed it the first time. And I thought, well, I need to take a little break here because my original vision when I left AT&T was to travel the world. And I was going to go to every country on the face of the earth. And then I decided that might be boring. And I thought, I need to have some roots somewhere. So that's when I said, oh, okay, this is what I'll do. And I laid out my plan, how I would invest in some properties, and some properties I would sell. I would invest in some properties, and then I created my own property management company to manage all of these properties that I already had, plus the ones that I would be buying. That was my basic plan. And I also thought about all those people I knew in New Jersey. These were corporate America professionals who just, went to happy hour on Friday evening after work and didn't do much of anything on the weekend. Speculate, relax, run to New York, see a Broadway show, something like that. They weren't investing. So I said, well, that's who my customers are going to be. So my plan on these properties included them, the ones that I had met at AT&T. And so I started, we can close that door. So I started planning presentations. I was good at presenting information. I had done that for a long time, even within the company, on my regular job. So I said, well, these single family houses, I'll sell to people on the East Coast. And what I did, I bought a camera, and I took pictures of each property that I thought would give them a little cash flow, but a nice write-off, because they didn't have write-offs. They were just spending their money at happy hour. And then I developed a presentation of what I was going to say, and I would show them in the profile how, we could get this property, sell them this property in Oklahoma, even though they were living in New York and New Jersey, and that's where most of them were. And that it would cash flow and it would give them a write-off. So I showed them how that worked on their tax form. And so I would line these properties up, profile them with my camera, with all of the statistics that went with that. And I would schedule these meetings, these investment opportunities. And so the word got around New York and New Jersey that I was doing this. And so I would pick locations like hotels. And there was one that I used to really love to do up there near Newark Airport. And in this hotel, they had a real nice room called the library. And I would make my pitch on the properties here in Oklahoma. And then I come back with a handful of contracts. And so I just, go ahead on, close the deal and all that and get it going. And then I start hiring property managers to manage, the properties while I ran to the East Coast and stayed a month. And I came back here another month. And I did that for a number of years.
Oh, wow.
And then the word spread that I was doing this. And so other folk in other places heard about it. So during the time that I was a commercial realtor here in Oklahoma, I listed motels, golf courses, mostly motels.
What are some motels around the area that you listed?
Well, that brings up an interesting story about a relationship that developed over that motel, which plays in my current work now. One of the best supporters that we have in the fine arts is, do you want names or not? You do?
Mm-hmm.
David Rainbow, who is Bank First, has the most banks in Oklahoma. That's how I met him.
Oh, wow.
I had joined the Rotary Club.
Rainbows. I'm thinking, does that have some ties to OU? I feel like the Rainbows College of Education.
Everywhere you see the name Rainbow, that's the family.
Is it Rainbow? How do you spell that?
Rainbolt.
Yep. Okay.
And time you see, they came straight out of Shawnee. The family did, to Oklahoma City, and was at 101 North Broadway for a long time.
Okay.
And then they recently bought the building where the Petroleum Club used to be, Liberty Bank. They bought that and they moved across over there. They bought the parking lot and all that.
Jeez.
See how these connections work?
Yeah.
Well, I was at Rotary Club meeting, and he came. He belonged to Rotary. I didn't know it. And he came to a Rotary Club meeting and sat down and reached over and said, "My name is David Rainbolt." And he said, "I'm a banker," or something like that. And I told him my name and that I was a real estate broker by then. Because, see, I took the sales associate test for the sales associate. And I passed it the first time, and then I immediately ran off to Greece, my other travels. I was going to travel the world. So I went to Greece.
Wow.
And so I came back. I had rested up from passing the test, and I came back and immediately started finding out what it took to be a broker. So by the time I met David Rainbolt, I had my plan really working around here in real estate. I was, well known in real estate circles. So he said, "Oh, so you're a realtor. I got an old motel down there on Southwest. I think it's about 74th and Penn." And he said, "We're trying to get rid of it, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "You think you can sell that for us?" And I said, "I most definitely can." And so that began a long-term relationship, which lasts to this day.
Wow.
To this day. And if you see it, Anita Arnold, he knows immediately who that is, because as I finally made a decision after Oklahoma City, it looked like it was about to go all the way under because the economy was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I realized there is no such thing as an expert. Some people are more experienced than others, but they're not expert. And so nowadays when people say, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, I really can't see around corners."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in corporate America, we did projections all the time.
Yeah.
We looked at the most likely case, the worst case, and then the best case.
Yeah.
So I came with all of that kind of knowledge, but it seemed like nobody around here knew anything about what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And when some people who did know what I was talking about, like David Rainbow, he was, I think, immediately struck by that. And so we started with his motel that he said he was trying to sell. And the reality of it, and David probably wouldn't appreciate me saying it quite candidly, but it's just the truth. I had the motel sold. The first thing, when he asked me to sell it, I didn't know he already had it listed with Coldwell Banker.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was the problem. So he just said, "Come by the bank and pick it up." I went by and I picked up the package, and the other real estate company, I'll just say that, had already prepared, a package for the. And so I took it and I said, "Okay, well, part of what I'm talking about is race relations too here in Oklahoma. It's real. It's very real. And it's everywhere.
Yeah. So
we might as well just go on and put that on the table and say that's how it is." But there was a guy that worked for IBM at the time out in San Jose, California. And he was getting ready to retire from IBM, but he had been buying properties. his name was Patel, Hira Patel, Hira, Hira Patel. And then I found out that whenever you see the name Patel, that basically means they're an innkeeper or a hotel owner or motel owner. That's what that name means in India.
Okay.
So he had called his broker, his banker out in San Jose and said, I'm interested in buying property in Oklahoma. And I want you to, and these were his words to her as they were told to me. He did not trust white brokers, and he wanted someone of color to represent him. And so it turned out I had worked for his banker's sister, worked with his banker's sister at Western Electric Company when I was an engineer out there. See how all that works?
Full circle.
Yes. So she called me up. She said, oh, I know somebody. So she called me up and she told me she had a very good customer for me, which Mr. Patel was, and continues to prosper. And he bought a lot of properties in Oklahoma, but he didn't buy from me. And I'll tell you that too. But he came, he saw the hotel. Of course, I had words with, the broker from Colwell, because I asked, Mr. Patel was coming to visit, and I said he wanted to spend 2 or 3 nights out there at the motel. He wanted to see basically who came in and out of there, the management, all that kind of stuff. And we got into a shouting match down there at his office because he said he would have to pay so much per night to stay. And I said, you're not giving him complimentary rooms when he's getting ready to buy them.
Right.
And so he called him a cheap investor, a cheap person. He's so cheap. That's when the shouting match started.
Oh, wow.
And when I say shouting match, I mean it was an open area with petitions in it. And so when I started shouting about him calling my investor cheap, it was on, and he got embarrassed. See, but nevertheless, Mr. Patel came. He stayed at the motel, and he decided he wanted to buy it. And so we spent all day long working on this proposal to Black First. And he offered them $1.2 million. And that was fine with them. He left an earnest money check with me after we had worked all day. And he said, Anita, type up this, what we've agreed upon. Here's the earnest money check, and I got a plane to catch tomorrow.
Wow.
Well, it didn't work out because somebody who was sitting at the table, and I won't name all these names, but it can be checked out and verified that it happened. Because some folk, when I see it, some of the things that happened, they said, I don't believe it. Well, they went and looked and filed, and they saw it was true. In their files, not my file, their files. Same strategy we used at AT&T. Not my projections with these folk going up. Yours. Bring the data. So I'm data driven, and I said I love math, so I don't have a problem with figures. I don't. They take time sometimes, but nevertheless, it's worth it when you know what you're doing to do it that way. Well, it was a frustrating experience because in the end, after someone flew all the way to Canada to find another that investor to buy it because the only thing I can figure is they didn't want us to sell it.
Oh. Who?
Somebody inside the bank.
Oh.
We'll say a consultant.
Oh. I see.
And told the bank, flew to Canada, told the bank that they had a buyer. That didn't work. He didn't have a buyer.
Yeah.
I got a call out in California. I was out there, and my oldest daughter she and her husband were living in California at that time in the Los Angeles area. And this call came saying, can you contact your buyer? And I was appalled. I said, well, I'll contact him, but I'll tell you what I'd do if it was me in his place. But I'm not buying it. So, I'll talk to him. So I talked to him, and he was very surprised, but really shocked. He said, he thought about it. He called me a couple of days later. He said, okay, he'll put an offer in, but it won't be the same offer. And the offer was $900,000 instead of the $1.2 million. Because stuff happened again, right? More, I call it racism. I mean, Bank First has been really, really good to us and really strong. But we're talking about the human condition. And we're talking about the conditioning of minds. In this city and state, we've seen it time and time, every day, all day. As a matter of fact, there's no denying it. Anyway, they turned it down and said, oh, we were just checking its interest.
That's a lot of money on the table just to be playing games.
So we walked away, and Mr. Patel walked away from me over that.
Oh, wow.
Because somebody else I knew, who knew someone, and we went to see this one, we were looking at other properties, met him at the door when we walked in and just took my investor away from me. Do you hear me? And he's the one that benefited in another nonprofit who is no longer in business here, not like that, not in the business they were.
Yeah.
Oh, that was funded. That investor bought so many motels from, and I didn't benefit from that at all. And I saw Mr. Rainbow at a Rotary meeting lately. And I mean, after that, later.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, by the way, what happened to the motel? He said, oh, we finally sold that old motel. I said, how much did you get for it? He said $600,000. So $600,000 was left on. That's right, on the table. So see, sometimes things are working in the air that you don't see. It could be politics, it could be racism, it could be ageism, it could be anything could come up.
Yeah.
Because of the human condition that plays and interferes with what you thought was just the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
So this guy was originally going to offer $1.2 million.
Yes.
But people inside the bank were against it. And so the bank
I'm not going to say people, I'll say one person.
One person. But in the end, he only got half of really what he could have gotten.
That is correct. And sometimes it happens.
Oh my
But the other thing is you need to know about corporate America for the most part. And I consider that corporate America. It wasn't a profit. Till the end, generally, they will stand by their man.
That's crazy.
And if they take any kind of action, it'll be quietly later.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they stand by their man because, I don't know, maybe it reflects on the decision that was made
about
whoever.
Well,
that's just, and as a matter of fact, when I was on that site selection committee, and this was after I left corporate America, and was in real estate. And I can't really say too much about that because that's how I ended up on the site selection committee for the Democratic Party.
Oh, okay.
It all ties together.
Wow.
They were looking, I didn't know because I didn't even know there was such a thing as a site selection committee.
What is a site selection committee?
That's the site selection committee chooses the city where the convention, the national convention, will be.
Okay.
Before the elections, just
Right.
before the election.
Okay.
Well, I was busy with my real estate, right? And I had gone to places like Stanford University doing my economic development workshops. People around here hadn't even heard of economic development. They didn't. That was new to them. So I had done the professional development conferences at AT&T. I just said, well, we're going to call these economic development workshops. So I held the first one over here at the Omniplex.
Oh.
And I brought in my friends from the East Coast to teach about economic development and growth in the community, and how to build wealth in the community, individually and collectively. I did that right over there, and I've got that information too. But it carried me to Stanford to make my pitch. All I was doing was getting more customers to buy and invest in real estate here. Well, in the meantime, this person who was a politician, he's deceased now, he was with the Jimmy Carter administration, and he had an incredible memory. I mean, incredible, because I'd only met him a couple of times, like at a meet and greet or a luncheon that they were having for the president when I lived in Washington, D.C., but now I was in New Jersey. I didn't know he was in New Jersey. He was in New Jersey and contacted me from having met me in Washington, D.C. while I was still in corporate America. I went to one of my economic development presentations. I think I had been at Stanford making, no, I wasn't. I was at Yale. That's where I was. I was at Yale. I went everywhere. Let me put it that way.
I see.
We'll say Yale, because that's right. That's where I launched the first economic development conference. And all these people came. I was working with the Urban League up there because they'd heard about it. But when I finished that economic development conference up there, and I came back into New Jersey because I always stayed with a friend who had an apartment building. I stayed in one of her apartments when I went up there and stayed a month. And then I came back here and I stayed a month. I had all these messages, strange messages on my voicemail saying, call these people, and I didn't recognize any of the names, And then finally, this guy that published a magazine called Corporate Headquarters, which I used to write for that magazine too. He was a Bell System employee at one point, but he wrote about the corporate culture, and I was one of his writers. And I recognized Harold's voice, and he says, call Ben Brown. And I thought, call Ben Brown. All these other strange names about folks saying, call this person, and I didn't know who they were. Well, when I called Ben Brown, he said, oh, you're too late. That's what he said. I said, too late for what? What I missed? I don't like to miss stuff. He said, well, they were looking for someone to sit on the site selection committee for the Democratic convention coming up. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I don't know what that is, but I said, oh, shoot. He said, well, you're on it. And I thought, really? How'd that happen? Because I hadn't even changed my voter registration, to tell the truth,
Yeah.
from New Jersey to here. When he said, you're on it. And I thought, I don't know what that means. I said, well, what do I do? He said, nothing. Everything's going, they'll be in touch with you and blah, blah, blah. And they were. They were in touch with me. But they were looking for someone, a woman in particular. They were looking for a female who had their own business in the Midwest.
Mm.
Well, I wasn't exactly in the Midwest. We called this the Southwest. But he said, your name ran across my mind, so I gave it to him. Gave it to the chairman of the board
Mm-hmm.
of that committee. And I thought, here we go, on the adventure I know nothing about. And so I came back here, he called me. I was still wondering, what in the world? I mean, I had the real estate company, and that was what made him think of me. So the first thing I did, I ran down and got a home registration,
Mhm.
voter registration, because I hadn't had time to do that. I was busy running back and forth making presentations. And so by the next time I heard from someone, it was from, the chairman of that committee.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, we don't have our minds made up about anybody, it's a 4-year appointment, like that. And I thought, 4 years, really?
Yeah.
And here I am going into something I know nothing about. But it was great. So that's when I met Nancy Pelosi and all these other folks, because Nancy was on that same committee. And for 2 of those 4 years, we were going around visiting cities. And each city would put on a huge dog and pony show that lasted 3 days at least.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it might be 4, depending on what the program is. But they wanted you to be familiar with their transportation systems. They wanted you to know that they had a venue that was big enough to hold all these thousands of people. And if they didn't, like down in Houston, I think Catherine Whitmire was the mayor down there. She was building the convention center, but wasn't finished. So she bought a policy from Lloyd's of London for some astronomical, it was in the millions of dollars,
Mm-hmm.
that she would give them if they didn't finish the convention center before that. And everybody was, let's say $10 million, a $10 million policy to guarantee that you're going to have. Oh boy, that was very enlightening, that
Wow.
whole 4-year experience.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I was still moving right along with my real estate, and things were going pretty good in that I had a lot of properties that I was managing, and then I won. Everybody here kept telling me, I say everybody, several people kept telling me that I should apply for a HUD contract, because there were so many vacant properties all over Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'll be so bold as to say that HUD ruined the market here, because people were in a position where they couldn't make their mortgage payments. The economy was so bad here. So HUD just told them, just walk away from it. We won't chase you. Yes, they did.
Wow.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Oh my God.
And
So just walk away from your house? Like just pack up
Yeah.
and leave?
just pack up and go find you another place to stay. We're not going to chase you. And so HUD had this huge inventory of properties. And so then, it was getting kind of tough because I had moved from the Tiffany building over here off of Bay Avenue to over here on Northwest Expressway, 501 Northwest Expressway. And I had a suite of offices with all these relatives. I mean, I think I might have had about, I could put 2 sales associates in one office because they were that big.
Oh.
And so I had about 8 or 10 sales associates, and they were bringing in money, because they were just selling regular houses. And once in a while, I even sold a church too. That was one of the listings that I had. And the church was the first first AME church. I started to say African American. These churches changed their name. But it is First AME. That's what it's known as now. And I sold that property.
Wow.
But it was so bad that at that time, my mother was real frightened because I moved up to this big building over there at 501 Northwest Expressway. And it's now, it's Midfirst Bank. It's Midfirst bought all of those buildings again. But everybody was fleeing the scene here, and all the large companies. It was kind of difficult even to get insurance, because everybody was leaving Oklahoma at that time. Mm-hmm. But it was so bad that they would give you a year's free rent. And I found that out when I went to the brokers class to become a real estate broker. And so I was over there for a year paying no rent. They took care of all the utilities, all that. And so I decided to look into this HUD contract since everybody kept telling me to do it. So you bid on the contract. Well, I bid on it, and I sent this guy who lives out there in Yukon to this day. He was one of my property managers. His name is James Hillis. I will call his name James Hillis, and he's in business for himself now. And he calls his company Royal Flush. And he does porta potties everywhere. But he used to work for me, and he was very good. So I sent him down there with my bid, up for the bid opening. And I won it by 75 cents. I won it by 75 cents.
Oh my gosh.
And James came back, and I was, anxious to find out how I did on the bid because I had calculated, I thought, well, let me just put my pencil to the paper on this. And he was angry. He was so angry. I said, did I win the bid? He said, yes. And I said, well, what are you so angry about? He said, I almost got into a fight with a guy. I said, I didn't send you down there to fight. I mean, what was this? Well, this guy had figured as well. He thought he had figured and had the bid. But I beat him out by 75 cents. And he jumped up and said, it's a fraud, it's a fraud. I did this, He was talking about how he calculated. He was really upset that he lost that bid. See, I had been on the best properties in Oklahoma. I bid on Camelot, Wildwood, all of those properties, everything on the east side I had properties out in Yukon, the best ones. I had properties in Guthrie, the best ones. I mean, I had the best contract, and I beat him out by 75 cents. And he was upset.
Wow.
And he and James got it. So HUD decided that they weren't just going to sign the contract and give it to me. They said I need to come down and talk to them. So I got my little stuff together and I went down to talk to the chief in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, what did he want to talk about? And he said, well, I don't know anything about you. I said, what does that have to do with the time of day? I'm a broker. And he said, well, I mean, you know, you could be anybody. You could be a mom and pop operation. I said, does 501 Northwest Expressway sound like mom and pop to you?
Right.
You know, so I did some more. And so he said, oh, we're going to have to do some more checking. I said, well, you should have asked for a resume when you sent the bid out if you thought that you might run into a problem where you didn't know somebody. So he said, well, we're going to look into this. I said, okay. So he sent this guy who worked for Hood at the time out to my office. They didn't tell you when they come. They just popped up.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a receptionist there to greet them. I mean, this was a high-class operation I was running. But they didn't know I wasn't paying any rent. You know, because I had taken advantage of the economy. And then I had a bookkeeper, a young lady who turned out to be, I think she was a CPA,
Mm-hmm.
but she was really good. And so she was keeping up with all of the services that we were to provide. And she had been keeping up with what I already owned personally as well. And so when Luis Garcia, that was his name, and I think last time I saw him was at the post office up here in Bethany. And he said, you remember me? I said, how? I remember you. Yes, I do. He came to the office and they buzzed me and said that Mr. Luis Garcia is here to see you. I said, who is he? Where is he from? They said, Hood. So they escorted him back and he sat down and he looked and everything. So I said, how can I help you? And he said, oh, you know, you're all right. And I thought, well, I mean, I thought there were some questions. Did you want to see my files?
Right.
You know, because I had all my filing cabinets and everything right there. And he said, oh, no, it's not necessary. I said, you sure?
What are you here for then?
Yeah. He said, well, we just want to make sure it wasn't mom and pop operation. I had a full staff of folk.
Yeah.
So that was the investigation. So they gave me the contract.
Jeez.
That's how it happened. And all the people that I met,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with that contract. And we were selling properties like pancakes. I mean, we were selling properties. And all these other folk who got contracts, you know, down in Norman and the south part of the city and all of that. They were going in the hole on it because they bid too low.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were just flourishing. So these other brokers who had contracts, you know, with Hood, had a meeting. They just couldn't make it. And they wanted me to join in with them because they wanted to all go down to Hood and complain. I didn't have any complaints. I said, well, you know, count me out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing good.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't struggling. So they went down to Hood and they moaned and groaned so loud. Hood called all the contracts in. It was supposed to be a 3-year contract. And they called it in after 18 months.
Including yours?
Including mine.
Mm.
And I said, well, what's the deal? But the whole 18 months that I had it, there were folk that didn't want to see me succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And they were folk right inside of Hood, namely the chief. And it was so funny because he was always saying, and you were mowing grass in December? I said it was a warm December. We were supposed to, and we were.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had people who mowed the grass and, kept the yards looking like they were occupied. And I had people who put on roofs, on the houses. I had appraisers who appraised the value of the houses.
Mm-hmm.
I had all of that going on. And so he started whining and saying that I was the worst broker he had in the bunch, which was not the truth.
Oh my gosh.
And while he was sitting up there, I was standing there because I had gone down, because you have to turn these reports in, right? I was standing there while he was falsely accusing me of not being a good broker. That just wasn't the truth. It was not the truth at all. And this, I think he was racist. I think he was. This lady came in, well-dressed lady, while he was right in the middle of chewing me out. And she said, I want to see who's in charge down here. And so he said, I'm in charge. Because he was chewing on me, right? He said, what's the problem? So she said, I don't have a problem. I live in Edmond. And I wanted to compliment you for keeping that property next door to me looking so nice. She said, it looks like it's occupied, it's well kept, and it's not ruining our neighborhood. And I just want to come down here and just say that. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, okay, thank you. And so she turned around and went and got on the elevator. And I said, and you were saying what? Right. What did you say?
Right.
He just walked on back to his desk.
Because what can you say after that?
That's right. But it was always something that they were trying to blame me for, and there was nothing to blame. Yeah. It was just a made-up story.
Yeah.
Somebody's imagination they hadn't even been out to see. So, when he called the contracts in after 18 months, and I did really well, I decided, based on what they sent back out for you to bid on, I said, this is a trap. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Because number one, they had things that were difficult to, that they said they required. It was difficult to meet. Mm-hmm. And so I had already, there was another real estate broker. She's still around here. She's a minister. But they had told her, they sent word, sort of. And they told her they were going to get me. And they ended up getting her. Because what happened, she just had a one-person office. Mm-hmm. And she went out to show a property to sell. And they went by her office and she wasn't there. But see, I had a full stand.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's how she got out of the real estate. They waited until she was out showing one of their properties to someone who was interested in buying it. And they had told her that they were going to get us. And so I said, this is where I came in. I will not sign these papers that put me in a position of jeopardy.
Yeah.
I just won't do it. So and they called me up and they said, all you have to do is, I said, no, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that was part of the real estate business. As I came out of corporate America, I had learned a lot from corporate America, which, was to my advantage. Particularly when I was making presentations and I could make very good ones. And at one point when my business had gotten a little tough after I let that contract go, I started doing presentations around in the libraries to teach people how to invest. Mm-hmm. And This is the culture. This is where we live.
Mm-hmm.
But my workshops would be full,
Wow.
and they were whites. I'd have 1 or 2 black folk in there. They would be taking copious notes, and
Oh.
they would ask me, had I franchised, these presentations and my approach and the process that I went through, on teaching the community how to invest
Mm-hmm.
in properties. Then they would get up and say, well, I'm going to tell my sister or their real estate brokers that I'm going
No.
no. Did I get customers out of there? No, but there were plenty of folk that took the ideas and ran on down the street
Right.
and shared them with who they knew.
No. So how long did you put those workshops on?
Until I had decided that, I'm going to have to make a decision here because this real estate market is too tough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are not enough hours in the day. The values were, at one point, you could buy 3 houses. HUD was giving them away. Down there in the John F. Kennedy Center,
Yeah.
you could buy 3 houses for $15,000 cash. And I thought, look at my strategy for all the pieces. Because in looking back at it, I took the most likely route. Not the most likely, that's not true. The best route, which was a little bit far out,
Mm-hmm.
and I should have taken the most likely or the least likely,
Yeah.
in planning my business going forward. Because I had sunk my money into all of these properties. And then, here comes the killer. Banks wouldn't loan black folk money very easily. They'd loan you for a church. They would loan you money for a car, depreciating things.
Mm-hmm.
Depreciating things. They were quick to make those kind of loans, but they were not quick to make business loans where you were sustaining yourself and creating wealth.
Yeah.
And your zip code does matter. I found that out when I lived in Quail Creek. See, I bought a house over there when I first came back here. I was equipped. I mean, I had perfect credit.
Mm-hmm.
I had everything going for me. I bought it by buying the second mortgage on the house, which was a nice sum of money
Mm-hmm.
that I just plunked down on it. I had it. You couldn't take that away from me. But as things worsened, and this was about an 8-year period of time where it was just really difficult, everything. The joke was around here, nobody's making any money in Oklahoma City except the lumber companies.
Mm-hmm.
That's how many. And May Avenue was depressing to drive down.
Really?
Everything was boarded up. Penn Square Bank had failed.
Oh.
And
Okay.
that had a real dampening effect.
Yeah.
But HUD didn't help it by giving all those houses away, which they did. So, at any rate, I was financing my own business since nobody would loan me any money.
Mm-hmm.
I will recall a bank that I went to, and it was Bank of Oklahoma, to tell the truth. And I said, I met with a loan officer there. I had plenty of assets. I had a little bit of money left by then because, racism will kill you. It'll kill you dead in your tracks. I already know. I'm not dead, but I will survive.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to do that real well. I was talking to this guy, And he asked me my address, my home address. I said 3304 Rock Creek Road. He put the pen down. He just put it down and he said, "Isn't that in Quail Creek?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "I can't help you."
What's the reasoning? I mean, racism, but I mean,
He said, "I can't help you." I don't know what the reason was. I had perfect credit. I had plenty of properties.
yeah.
I was just trying to get a little bridge loan to keep me going, right? He said, "I can't help you." He asked me if that, I didn't even, I mean, that 3304 Rock Creek Road, that's only a 1 block street.
Mm-hmm.
But he knew it was in Quail Creek.
Yeah.
I guess he does know it. He did know it because it was right up the street from his bank on May Avenue.
Yeah.
Put the pen down and said, "I can't help you."
Oh wow.
So then a friend of mine told me he had gotten started with the McDonald's business. He said, "Oh, go into," it wasn't Bank of America then, it was the bank before then. He said, "Go in there and talk to Faye Dunbar." I'm going to call his name. He'll let you have a loan. I went to talk to Faye Dunbar, and I was listing all my assets, and he checked my credit and all that. And he came back and he told me he couldn't help me either. And I told Hart Stevenson, my friend, my classmate, who sent me to see Faye Dunbar,
Mm-hmm.
and I got nothing. I had no place to turn. Even when I moved out of my house in Quail Creek and rented it out, I rented it out to this couple. Do you know someone, and I think the someone was the mortgage company that held my mortgage at that time. They ran my, I had it rented out. They ran my renters out of there. They come by at night with their lights out, creeping down the street. One time they stopped and rang the doorbell and said, "It must be nice y'all sitting up here in this big house that you don't even own."
Wow. Wow. So they just wouldn't leave you alone.
No. And as a matter of fact, when I first moved over there, I got, that was before caller ID. I got obscene phone calls every day, every night.
So was that area still predominantly white? Like,
Yes,
okay.
of course. I think Quail Creek had 3 African Americans living in it. I was the 3rd one that moved in there. Dr. Finley moved in, but they couldn't say anything to him because he paid cash for his house.
Mm.
He was very wealthy. He paid cash for his house. Buster and Ruby Tryon, I had where we had gone to the same church, First AME Church. And Buster and Ruby kept buying houses, selling them, moving up, buying that. And she was real good.
Mhm.
She worked in the county. And so we all knew she moved over there, in Quail Creek, just north of 122nd Street. I lived just north of Hefner Road. And most of those houses over there had swimming pools. I had a swimming pool in my house too, But Ruby and Buster tried their best to sell their house. They never were able to sell the house. And brokers here knew that whites, if they knew a black person had lived in the house, would not buy it.
Wow.
But that wasn't just Oklahoma, because when we lived in Memphis before we were divorced, we lived in a predominantly white area. There were maybe two other couples that lived in that area. We experienced the same thing when we were still married, but they weren't able, this first broker wasn't able to sell our house, even though it was a brand new house when we bought it, and it was still in superb condition. Well, it turned out that she just wasn't accustomed to African Americans having houses that looked like that. They weren't accustomed to African Americans over there, around Quail Creek area, in houses that looked like that and had swimming pool and all that.
Wow.
It's your conditioning, your environment.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy to me.
It's crazy.
I guess during the time, that was the experience of a lot of Black homeowners, especially moving into these all-white neighborhoods, but just the type of conditioning to think, like, I don't want to move into a house that a Black person lived in. To me, it's just asinine. Like, what?
It is, but that's the way it was.
Do you think it's like going to be the ghosts of Black people's past still in this house when you move in? I mean, what's the big deal here? So it's just.
I tried, after they ran my renters out, I tried to sell my house. They ran and the thing about it was, I had sent in the mortgage payment in a cashier's check. They sent it back. They would not accept it.
Around what year was this?
This happened around, let's see, I came back here. It was about 89.
Wow, okay.
90, somewhere in there.
I ask because I think sometimes we think about like the treatment of Black people just only being in a certain time period, like the 50s and 60s and the 70s, you know what I'm saying? But like to know that this treatment continued, it's continuing still,
of course.
But to
Yes,
just historicize it in a way where we understand, like, no, this wasn't just relegated to one certain decade and then Martin marched and we were all, free, but like this is still occurring even into the 90s and beyond. So that's why I asked.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's alive, it's well, and it's destructive, But I experienced that. So when they sent the cashier's check back, I have a bunch of mail on my desk, for example. I said, okay, I'll get around to this here. Well, I didn't realize that they had sent it away. Sent it back to me until I opened it and they were serving some papers that said we're foreclosing on this house.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So they rejected the payment. Unbeknown to you.
Unbeknown. And it was a cashier's check. I said,
right, so the money's there. It's not like a check, but like the money's in the cashier check.
So I went to bankruptcy court. And that's when I learned about the chapters of bankruptcy.
Yeah, yeah.
You can go to fend off. Nobody was chasing me but the banker. And they sent a check back.
And there was no way for you to try to fight that in a way where it's like, I sent the check, they sent it back.
No,
but it was just no point.
I went to bankruptcy court to force them away from any of my assets, that I had. And so I was in a protective mode about not losing everything.
Yeah.
So, because at that point, I had, my family is not rich. They never have, but they work hard and, so I had helped family members out by buying properties or renting properties that I own to them. So I didn't want this domino to fall all the way down. See,
Yeah.
so then, you have to put on your strategic thinking cap
Yeah.
and see which way you're going to approach this so that you don't affect all these other people, and other investors, because I told you I had a property management company and
Yeah.
all of that. So it was rather traumatic, and I had hired this lawyer to represent me in court. And I won't call his name because he's still walking around here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still with a major law firm that would probably be embarrassed. But in court, these folk were lying on me about that house in Quail Creek. And the fact that they had come by there, rang the doorbell, ran my clients, my renters away. I wanted to set up a plan. I hired him to see they'll let you pay out your debt or whatever over time.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the bankruptcies mean you're out of business. You can create a plan which allows you to keep everything whole and all that. I wasn't taking any chances, because I started selling my properties to my relatives for little or nothing, just take over the payments like that. And so I helped my family out like that and not go down the tubes on racism. That's all it was.
Yeah.
But see, I had faced it before because when I first came back here, I was going to build a home and borrow money to build a home, get a mortgage. And I was denied, and I had perfect credit. See, and so I was going to file a lawsuit. And I was standing on the corner downtown in front of the Civic Center Music Hall watching a parade. And the lawyer that I gave the money to retain to file the lawsuit came up to me, well-known lawyer, and he gave me this envelope. And the envelope was my check that I had given him to retain him. And I said, "What is this?" And he said, "I'm not going to sue." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "You can't win, Anita." And I said, "What do you mean I can't win?" He said, "I know the judge."
Wow.
And he gave it back to me.
Wow.
So it's alive and well.
Yeah.
And it can't be denied. Most people just maybe didn't have as many incidents as I did because maybe they weren't as bold, if you want to put it that way, as I was in pursuing, the things, the projects, the things, the plans that I had put in place.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no reason why those things happened to me. And yes, I kept my credit report from that time, and you will see on the credit report, perfect credit.
Mm-hmm.
Assets too.
Jeez. So, in total, how long were you in the real estate business? Like how many years?
Until about 8 years or so.
Okay, so early 90s, you got out of it.
Yes. When I came, I was on the board. See, when I first came back here, I think I told you the first board that I sat on, nonprofit board I sat on, was because when I was in New Jersey and I was making plenty of money, traveling the world, I sent a check down here to Black Incorporated It wasn't solicited. I just sent it. And they were shocked that they got this check in the mail. And so as soon as I moved back here, and they heard I was moving back, they asked me to be on Black Incorporated's board. And that's how I started in the fine arts business.
We made it. Well, let's stop there today. Let's stop here today.
You saw I closed my mouth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you're getting how we're doing it now. It's like
Right.
it's like a movie where it's like, all right, on the next episode, we'll get into. So this is a great place to stop, and then next week we can pick up with what your experiences were like sitting on the board of Black Ink, and then how you transitioned to eventually running the organization. So
Okay.
this was great. Thank you, Miss Arnold.
You're welcome.
Going to stop the recording now.